Okay, so here we have John McCrory, who is a director of Repair Cafe Wales, and we're going to spend 20 minutes or so, maybe longer, just chatting to John about how he got involved with the company and what his hopes for the future are. So, John, tell us when you got involved and what you've seen thus far and what you do, please.
Wow, that's a huge question. So I got involved with the very first Repair Cafe in April 2017. And that was through seeing a poster that was just had been put up around Cardiff, probably a few months prior to that, by yourself and Keris, who are the founding members. And I think the poster said something along the lines of, "Would you like to fix things?" And being an engineering graduate, who, I'm a researcher in engineering, I don't do all that much technical hands-on stuff. And I thought, hey, this would be a really kind of fun way to use my skills, but also help the community. There's all those kinds of motivations to wanting to get involved. So yeah, that was where I started, April 2017. And it was great fun. We met loads of nice people. We fixed some stuff, and so I just kept going. And then through my involvement as a volunteer fixer and speaking to yourself and Keris, we started kind of planning things together, and then a kind of natural partnership kind of came into place really through just our interactions. And then we formed the board and we formed the company, and I guess here we are now, although there's still a big bit in the middle already there.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot really to go into. But what were the other parts of the question?
When you joined, it was just the one Repair Cafe, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah. So we started in Cathays, and that was basically due to proximity to where you were as organisers, really, right? And also you had an established relationship with the first venue person, or you'd found a venue basically. That was why we were there, right? And I think it was a good place to start because it's quite an energetic region of Cardiff, and I think a lot of ideas could fly there. So there were a lot of benefits to starting there, but that is where it was. And so since then, the kind of way it's evolved, if you want me to give kind of almost like a Repair Cafe Wales brief history in a way.
Yeah, that'll do. Yep.
Yeah, the people that attend the event, the one event at the time, really enjoyed it. And a lot of people we had coming along and saying, I've driven down from Caerphilly to come here and get my toaster fixed. I'd really like to have one of these in Caerphilly. Can you help me set it up? And it went from there, really. So we decided that, well, of course, we're in a really good position to help other people open these repair cafes. So we started putting together, sorry, video feed there. I started putting together kind of the best practice instructions for other people. So I think the second one we opened up was actually in Splot, and then maybe Grangetown or one of those.
Yeah.
And that was so those two were really off our own backs. I think we had the motivation as kind of organisers at that point to open them there because we wanted to help the communities and we had contacts in those communities, so we thought we could make it work. And after that, it was really other people coming to us and saying, I'd like to start one here, and then us supporting them in that endeavour. And that's really how we built the model of how Repair Cafe Wales works, where we've built this starter kit now. And it's very comprehensive, and anyone can really get in touch and start their own event with minimum difficulty. So we're reducing the barrier to engagement.
You've put a lot of time in over the years to this, and now far beyond the simple fixing side of things. In fact, certainly over the last, since COVID's hit, you've done a lot more. In fact, you've always been very involved in the management side, but there's no fixing to be done.
Yeah.
So I guess why have you got more involved? What is it about the values or the purpose or the things Repair Cafe Wales is doing that have motivated you enough to give the time that you give?
Well, I think climate change and sustainability are two very, very important issues. They can't be stressed enough. And I do think that globally a paradigm shift is needed in the way we conduct ourselves. both within the economy, socially, everything along those lines, really. And I see, or I saw, and I still do, I see Repair Cafe Wales as a mechanism for facilitating that change. And not only that, on a personal level as well, it's a vessel for facilitating change, which I'm involved with and actually can help steer. So I think that's probably what made me become more involved and say, you know, I was fixing, but really try and push this movement and put a lot of my own energy into it because I really do believe that it can be a force for great good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to think a bit about the future in terms of where we could go, and you know it's quite open, and obviously it's quite contingent on lots of things. If we never get any funding again, it's going to be a very different model than if we land 500,000 in the next year or so, which we might well do. I guess ideally, where would you, if you could imagine Repair Cafe Wales in 10 years time within the bounds of possibility, you know, we're not going to have black suits and lasers and motorbikes, levitation engines.
Yeah.
But you know, what would your hopes be for the next 5 years?
So just before I even get into the meat of that answer, something you said about the kind of differences that we dependent on, say, funding. I think even when you're scoping out these visions, even without funding, the visions can still happen. They just take longer. I think that's something I would would really point out, because when we started this, we did it completely. You know, it was entirely volunteering, and it was just a slightly slower pace. Basically, the funding has allowed us to accelerate the pace, but so we can still have big dreams and goals even if there's no funding, and it'll just take us longer to get there. But yeah, if I think about where I'd like us to be, and not only that, but where I think we genuinely could be, is a household staple, a go-to. Basically, I want to facilitate the behavioral change so that there's a repair cafe-esque facility in every kind of local district, maybe call that every town. And that not only is it just there, but the people that reside in that area kind of use it as their first port of call. So when something goes wrong, the mentality is immediately, let's have this looked at to see if we can fix it before we look at buying a new one. And the goal is that in 10 years, that would be great if we're in that position. But we've also, like I said, facilitated the kind of behavioral change around that, so that I guess there's an educational element to what we're doing, in the sense that people understand the importance of repair over purchasing a new one and throwing the old thing away. So yeah, Repair Cafe in every town, everyone's using it. That's the 10-year plan. There's probably more we could do. I'd have to have a good old think, but that's like the core primary one, and I think that's how you have the greatest impact, because once you've got people thinking about that kind of angle, it's pervasive. It gets into all elements of your life. The moment you're thinking, hey, my vacuum cleaner's broken, my shirt's ripped, I should have that repaired. If that's your train of thought, every other little interaction, every other thing that you buy, every other interaction you have with the environment, you're going to have that. It's going to have more prominence, the sustainability angle. So I think that's a huge aspect for me. So increasing our impact in behavioral changes would be huge in 10 years.
Good. Okay, thank you. And in terms of the details, so if we say 10-year plan is to have a repair cafe in every for every, I don't know, 50,000 people, or in every town, or something like that. So in terms of practical stuff, you mentioned the sort of the systems and processes that we've been putting in place. Is there anything else that needs to happen other than that and funding? Or I guess we've been to some areas, and very often it's poorer areas actually that where volunteers haven't been very forthcoming. or there's been other issues. You know more about this than I do. But I guess what if I, in business speak, I would do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and
SWOT
threat
test analysis.
So what would the threats be to achieving that?
I mean, there are a lot, and you could look broader economically speaking. I think if people are feeling incredibly stressed due to their like immediate financial position, they're probably not looking outside their own homes to think, hey, how can I have a positive impact on the environment and the people around me? They're just really concerned about themselves and their family and the people that they care for and love. So I think that's a huge one. So, you know, that's a barrier to engagement with anything in life, not just Repair Cafe Wales. It's also a weakness or a danger to our progress. Then I guess you could say the apathy is another kind of threat there, because if people are apathetic towards environmental change or sustainability, they're less inclined to get involved with a project which has a primary aim of doing that. So yeah, I don't know if I'm also meant to be like thinking about ways around this, because it's not all on us as Repair Cafe Wales. We can help facilitate that educational kind of push, but really it's got to come from, to make any real meaningful change, it's got to be coming from every angle. It's got to be coming from government. It's got to be coming from what we see in the media. So it's going to have the big push.
Do you? I mean, I'm thinking. I mean, it does. You know, obviously, when and I don't want this to turn into a party political broadcast, but when you see people like Trump, you know, wielding the power that they wield, and you know, recently being voted out, but very, very narrowly. And you know, in my head, this raises questions about, you know, there's clearly, as you say, an educational project there when something like 30% of Americans, and I don't know the percentage of UK people, don't believe that climate change is real. Do you think that's something that's going to improve over time? Are you an optimist at heart, John?
Yeah, I mean, I am an optimist at heart. Maybe that's just like luck of the draw, but I think it allows you to kind of push forwards in spite of the evidence before your eyes. But yeah, I think those kinds of kind of social phenomenons where people are really, say, following Trump aren't as much to do with his environmental stance. His environmental stance is incredibly damaging, but I don't think that's not why he's got a base of supporters, or that ideology has a base of supporters. It's probably more accurate to say. It's more, I think, to do with this socioeconomic kind of that's the driver to someone like Trump. You know, I've heard things thrown around about the erosion of the middle classes, that kind of thing. People who feel like they should be further than they are in life and feel like there's something unfair, and they, you know, what? So that's the kind of person that ideology appeals to, yeah. So wealth distribution basically is a big thing there, and then also in terms of kind of cultural identity is the other one. So I think those are the two things, the motivators that take precedent. I don't think people are voting for that because the environmental thing, it's massively damaging. And unfortunately, before COVID-19 kind of took to the stage, I think that sustainability was, I would say, again, maybe a biased lens, but I think it was one of the number one concerns, at least here in the UK, and it was gaining huge traction. Obviously, we had Greta, and we had, I've forgotten his name now. Attenborough, sorry. I was trying to think of his first name. I kept thinking Richard Attenborough for some reason. So David. So yeah, they were creating a huge kind of social media buzz, and I think a lot of that energy, I hope it's still there when we come out the other end of this, in whatever that looks like. So yeah, I think there's energy there to do it. So I think it will get better. I am an optimist. I think it will have to get better. The pessimistic lens is that it has to, because the effects of climate change are going to just amplify and become more frequent. and there's going to become a point where even the person who stuck their head in the sand the deepest is feeling the heat and like has to admit right at some point. So there's that's.
Sure.
But I don't know when it will become the number one political like motivator. I don't know when it will be. That's the number one thing that gets you through.
Well, Boris is making nice noises at the moment, so that there's hope for us all. I mean, there's noise and action.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
Tell by your raised eyebrow.
Leave it when I see it.
So at the moment, as you know, we're applying for several big funds and big opportunities ahead of us. If they come off, so for people listening, one of them is the Welsh government's released a whole pile of money for local councils and government institutions to apply for. And we're applying on their behalf, if you like, or encouraging them to apply for money for us, and that could generate anything from 100,000 to $1 million if we're lucky. And there's various things that you've been involved with. So if we're pushing against an open door, in addition to opening repair cafes everywhere, can you see any other, I guess, strategic priorities that we might have or might aim for?
Yeah. So even when in my previous statement, when I talk about kind of a repair cafe event-esque facility, really that facility doesn't have to be a once a month pop-up event, which is how repair cafes are traditionally or currently run. It could well be a permanent establishment which hosts repair related events. So if that kind of money became available, then having permanent position on a high street or something along those lines would be fantastic. And I think at that point your role slightly shifts from, obviously I think if you had something like that, you could almost run it, imagine like a charity shop-esque front, and people can go in at any point of the day. You have a volunteer inside operating the desk, and people can drop things off, items, and then volunteers can come in and fix them at a time that's convenient to them, and then the person gets notified when it's repaired, and we aim to do it within a week. So that kind of model could happen. So you've got like this constant flow, and it becomes more of this free repair shoppy type thing. But once you have that residence, you can also facilitate other things, because you've got you now have space which you can kind of give people as a platform. So if you can turn that repair shop into like a more of a central hub for people in that community and start promoting other projects in the community which are also positive with a sustainability spin, then that's great. So you could host evenings where you do workshops where a group will come in and teach people how to do something more sustainably, and so on and so forth. So there's huge scope once you have a premises. There's loads of things that you can do, and because you're in a real position of kind of the power to actually do even more good. The other kind of thing that is on my mind that you could look at is to do with large upcycling of large deposits of waste, and that really would be essentially, there was a great example in a country, I forget now what the BBC article was that I've seen, and they effectively created a supermarket at the edge of a tip, and there was a huge upcycling project, and it was sort of the huge IKEA size thing, and but loads of little shops inside all doing like sustainability upcycling things, and the tip was right next to them, and there was a repair shop there, and so on and so forth. So that would be fantastic to be involved with something like that, because that would be a huge shift. Again, you're promoting a shift in mentality, seeing waste as a resource, that kind of thing. So that would be amazing as well. So but again, I
guess something you touched on, which we haven't spoken about, is the potential for. So if you do have permanent residents and you get volunteers coming in, you've got the opportunity for training as well, which it ticks, especially in Wales, it ticks a lot of themes around reskilling people for employment, improving confidence of people. perhaps even touching on, mental health, the improvement of mental health. So I guess one of the things I've noticed is that there's lots of great ideas. You've got people like Gemin, saying, we can this can be financially sustainable. You've got the remakeries, the permanent shops, the training, opening the repair cafes. Now we're still a relatively small very small organization in terms of full-time headcount. I think is it 3 at the moment?
Yeah, but that's
maybe
3 full time. It's
no.
It's 1.5 if you just count or something like that. So yeah,
I don't think I've ever come across an organization that has attempted and achieved so much with so few, without meaning to be Chillian about it.
Yeah, that's very down to the motivation of of those people who conduct those roles. They really give it their all. They go above and beyond.
Thinking about the organization in terms of its strengths and weaknesses. I mean, we've talked about we do have good people, and we're riding a wave in terms of it appears to be the right time for this type of stuff. But do we have weaknesses in terms of things that as an organization we should be aware of or improving?
So we don't currently have someone with a strong marketing background, and so that could have repercussions. We could be doing something suboptimally. I don't think that we do anything incredibly damaging because we don't have those expertise. I think we've got a vague enough understanding of things between the board members that we wouldn't do something that's incredibly damaging, but we might not be optimizing the opportunities that are in front of us because we lack those specific expertise. So that's a weakness of our current setup, is that kind of marketing and branding, that kind of thing. We don't have those expertise. So maybe that I would say that's a weakness. Ooh. I mean, we're motivated currently. I guess a weakness could be if motivation dwindled from people, but I can't see that necessarily happening because one of the core motivators for a lot of people, I guess you'll find out through doing these interviews, is the kind of helping communities and fighting environmental change. And if those problems still persist, which I can't see them going away anytime soon, then there's no reason for anyone's motivations to dwindle. So yeah, I'm struggling to answer that, to be honest. I'm not best placed to think about the weaknesses.
Okay. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you, or anything that you think the X really excites me? There's opportunity. I guess also about you personally, because you're charismatic and you're more of an extrovert than some people on the board. So I guess in terms of where you'd like to go with this.
I guess extrovert is apt. I do enjoy the events. I enjoy collaborating with other organizations who are also doing good things. That's why within the board, what I particularly take care of is generally external events, right? So I enjoy that networking side of things. So that's really my personal angle because of my personality. That's where I kind of get the most out of it as well, and can give the most because it natural synergy there. So there's that. But no, I think I was quite the most open and honest thing I can say is about like I say changing the behavior and creating a paradigm shift both within the UK and then using that as a leader for global change and.
Yeah, I mean the good thing is that there are. I mean there's a lot of organisations. I mean there's obviously repaircafe.org, There's a lot of organizations that are aligned to us. And I guess with your sort of external events hat on, one of the things that concerns me slightly is that there are hundreds possibly of these types of organizations around the world or around Europe, but there's very little coordination. And we've seen this with our attempts to get insurance. There's very little macro level organization or coordination of all of these efforts. So that, in my head, that means that there may be duplication. I don't know if there's anything we can do about this, but there may be duplication. There may even be people working against each other or competing against each other for fun.
Yeah. Also, you just said something that prompted me to think of another threat, which would be legislative. So at some point in the future, what we're doing could be deemed to be unsafe, and it could basically be cancelled. So that's a danger. And you probably need to think about when you mentioned insurance, which is kind of an ongoing bane for repair cafes at the moment. There's, you'll probably talk about it more when you speak to Keris perhaps, but because they've been really charged on that, Keris and Phoebe. So, getting some sort of unified approach to insurance for all repair cafes, creating a network. But, the processes of that more of like a cohesion are beginning to happen, I hope.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what's come before us, though, to see where those other networks that tried to do that kind of thing have failed. There's something called Fix Fest. That's a festival for kind of fixing related projects. We took part in that one, the 2021. And I can't remember off the top of my head whether they said it had been running. I feel like it had only been running for about 2 or 3 years before that. So I think that's still quite a new initiative, really.
Okay.
So it was not surprising that, like you say, you don't feel like there's a great sense of that. I guess the other angle with this is that all of these groups that have popped up probably have some level of a charismatic leader who is enjoying doing things their own way in their area. They've got a network, they've got their own network of 20 repair cafes, and they're happy with how they're doing things, and their organizers are happy with how they're doing things. And at that point, really, there doesn't seem much point in linking up because they're still doing good. It's hard to think how much more you could achieve by linking up. You could perhaps align some of your procedures, but really the most difficult thing is getting motivated members of the public to become organizers of individual repair cafes. That's the single greatest challenge, I think, that our movement as a whole globally faces. And then also pulling together all the volunteers which have the individual skills and getting them to come out of the woodwork, because they do exist. On a street of 100 people, at least a few of them can fix things. They have the skills, but getting them to realize that there's a repair event on, that's a real challenge. So I don't think making a network globally of repair cafes even helps that. But the way it would help is data. Because if we had a big network of repair cafes, you suddenly have a larger voice, you have a larger impact when you're lobbying and things like that. And if we're all sharing data and collecting data in the same way, more importantly, as we've seen, as we're going through our data now, we've got a fantastic ambassador who's actually collated all of that. It's been a real difficult process because it's all coming in drips and drabs and in different listings and labels. And that will be true of if we're going to unify our process using electronic forms, but we would not necessarily be able to use, it would be a large effort, to use other people's data if we had like several repair cafe groups coming together, just because it's all labeled differently. So collating that would be tough. But if we had more of a unified approach, we'd have a huge database of information which we could use to really push at different groups. So there you go. That's another thing for 10 years in the future. There's a more unified approach, and we've got the data, and we're really actually going at individual manufacturers or distributors saying, of the 1,000 vacuum cleaners we looked at this year, 800 of them were this brand, and out of those 800, 600 had this particular fault. You should change that. Right? That's a position we could be in if the data was clean enough and readily available. So there's another 10-year. That would be great.
Yes. I mean, there is all this stuff around, hiring instead of buying, in terms of
Mm.
leasing dishwashers, because obviously with a lot of goods manufacturers, it almost pays them to make things fail. So you've got the planned obsolescence, I think they call it,
Yeah.
with printers and iPhones and various other things. Whereas if you're renting something or leasing it, the emphasis is on it lasting as long as possible. So
Mm.
you're changing the economic model there.
Yeah.
And there seems to be some progress there around cars and white goods, but it's certainly not mainstream yet, is it?
No, it's not, and I think that's a cultural thing, though. We've created a prestige around owning anything. That's on us. So and we've been doing it for a long time. We like to own things, and it gives you status amongst other humans. I have this thing. I only have this thing, and it's a way of comparing. And so I think shifting away from owning things to sharing things and co-owning is going to take a really long time, even if it is for the best. And that it's that libertarian, basically argument essentially is where that's the big barrier. And then everyone uses things differently, so you've got that. There's a lot. It's a very mucky area, but that's why, like you say, it changes the incentive for the manufacturer, the distributor, provider. That's probably the most sensible way to do it at the moment. There is a great initiative which you probably will hear about through this, which is the Benthig, or just Libraries of Things. Sorry, Benthig is the one which is in Cardiff, but Libraries of Things as a concept is a sharing platform where people can donate items, and then other people can borrow those items, like you with the book. So that's starting. And if that gains popularity, who knows? That could be a trendsetter. Suddenly people start using that as their port of call when they need to get some power tools. I think it's fantastic for things like power tools, by the way. I think it really is the way to go. Don't buy them. You won't use them more than twice in your life. So just borrow them. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I guess I should emphasize for the students listening, is that Benthig is a library of things, which Keris is also involved with, and we'll be speaking to her later. And the idea is that you borrow things from this library rather than buying it yourself. And there's a lot of overlap between what we do and what they do. And there's potential at some point to even bring the organizations together and maybe have some discussions around that and whether there's benefits or costs to that. Cool, John, you're an absolute star. Thank you for your time. And yes, I will. Yes, I'll catch up with you shortly. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully there was useful information there for you to work with. So yeah, that's all I hope.